Good evening. This is the evening from the New York Times, and I'm your host for Thursday, July 23, 2026. We've got a packed briefing tonight, from a sweeping new round of global tariffs that take effect at midnight, to a Saudi nuclear deal suddenly thrown into doubt, oil hitting $100 a barrel after attacks in the Red Sea, and a surprising look at whether AI can actually do your job. Plus, the Fields Medals go to 4 young mathematicians, celebrity audiobooks worth hearing, and why moviegoers are shelling out $70 for a plastic Trojan horse full of popcorn. Let's dive in. We start with trade. At 12:01 a.m. tonight, the United States will impose a new batch of tariffs ranging from 10% to 12.5% on more than 80 countries. This replaces the global 10% tariff that expires at the exact same moment. President Trump has been pushing to reshape global trade for 17 months now, cycling through one trade law after another as court challenges knock down each iteration. The Supreme Court struck down his previous duties last year. He implemented the expiring 10% tariff in February as a stopgap. Now the administration is invoking Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, which lets the president penalize countries that engage in unreasonable or discriminatory trade practices. The specific rationale this time? The administration says these countries fail to block imports of goods made with forced labor, putting the U.S., which does enforce such a ban, at a disadvantage. Anna Swanson, reporting for The Times, notes this is the latest evidence of an expansive protectionist policy that's been repeatedly challenged in court. The tariffs took effect just after midnight, and they cover a vast swath of global trade. While we're on the administration, a few other developments. After a federal judge grilled Justice Department lawyers for nearly an hour, the DOJ withdrew subpoenas that had sought phone records and grand jury testimony from New York Times journalists. Those reporters had covered the security capabilities of the new Qatari-donated Air Force One jet. The Times called the subpoenas an attempt to intimidate the free press. Judge Arun Subramanian pressed the government hard on its handling of the matter. Separately, the administration dropped its demand that the University of Pennsylvania turn over a list of Jewish people on campus, a subpoena that had been part of a year-long EOC inquiry into anti-Semitism allegations. The court filing didn't explain the retreat. And the Secret Service confirmed a member of Vice President J.D. Vance's protective detail is under administrative investigation and potential criminal inquiry for compromising operational and information security. No details yet on what information was involved. Finally, The Times has published a detailed look at how the president's wealth has grown while in office, charts and all, made free for evening readers. Now to the Middle East, where a landmark nuclear agreement signed just a day ago is suddenly on shaky ground. On Wednesday, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia finalized a civil nuclear deal that would allow the kingdom to build reactors with American technology. But yesterday, on his social media platform, President Trump added a new condition. The entire arrangement, he said, is totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the very respected and successful Abraham Accords, meaning establishing diplomatic relations with Israel. That puts the Saudis in a bind. For years, Riyadh has insisted it will not normalize ties with Israel without a credible pathway to a Palestinian state. Israel's current government has rejected that. Israeli officials, unsurprisingly, welcomed Trump's demand. But the Saudi response has been silence. Rosemary Kalanick of the Brookings Institution told The Times, "I don't think the Saudis want to give this air." Complicating things further, the deal has drawn global criticism over whether it could allow Saudi Arabia to enrich its own nuclear fuel, a potential proliferation risk. Trump asserted today that the deal prohibits enrichment, but that contradicts officials in his own administration. Mark Landler, writing from Paris, frames this as part of a broader trend: allies seeking nuclear capabilities to hedge against aggressive neighbors and a receding Washington, potentially ushering in a more freewheeling nuclear era. Oil markets reacted instantly to violence in the Red Sea. The price of crude hit $100 a barrel today for the first time since May, after Iran's Houthi allies claimed they struck 2 Saudi tankers. President Trump threatened major military punishment against both Iran and the Houthis if they attack more ships. Some investors are betting the spike will be short-lived. Futures contracts suggest expectations that low inventories and midterm elections will push the administration to de-escalate. But neither Washington nor Tehran has shown much appetite for negotiations. In Congress, the House voted for a second time to direct Trump to end the war in Iran or seek explicit authorization. 4 Republicans joined Democrats in a narrow bipartisan majority. The measure has no force of law, but it's a clear rebuke. Shortly after, Senate Republicans blocked a similar measure from even being considered. Meanwhile, chaos erupted at border crossings between Iraq and Iran. Verified videos show attacks on the Shalamsha crossing in Iran's Khuzestan province and another crossing further north. Iranian and Iraqi media blamed U.S. airstrikes. U.S. Central Command hasn't confirmed. The region is on edge. Let's pivot to technology and the question on a lot of minds: could AI do your job? Several companies have recently cut staff after deciding AI tools could handle the work. My colleagues at the Times wanted to test that. They gave an AI agent full access to a laptop and asked it to complete a series of typical office tasks. The results were revealing, sometimes impressive, sometimes surprisingly limited. The experiment gets at the gap between the hype and the reality of current AI agents. On a related note, if you use chatbots like ChatGPT or Gemini, you might be unsettled to learn what they've inferred about you. Our personal tech columnist Brian Chen experimented with prompts to uncover what the models had guessed, from his family status to his anxieties, and shows how you can find out what they know about you, too. A quick roundup of other major stories. In Russia, Ukraine has opened a new front, targeting the facilities of Wildberries, the massive online marketplace that's essentially Russia's version of Amazon. Kiev has hid 5 warehouses in recent days, trying to bring the war home to ordinary Russians. The Tate brothers, Andrew and Tristan, prominent figures in the so-called manosphere, were arrested in Miami on federal charges including sex trafficking. In the hours after, many of their once vocal allies on the American right went quiet. One representative reached out to Alina Habba, a Trump counselor who had publicly supported them. The response was notably different this time. The FDA announced a new outbreak of cyclosporiasis, sickening at least 72 people. It's the worst year on record for the parasitic illness, and the agency is investigating 5 other clusters. The source of this latest outbreak hasn't been identified. In Brussels, EU regulators hit Google with a $1 billion fine, €890 million, for illegally undercutting competition through its search dominance. The decision comes at a tense moment for transatlantic trade, with Trump weighing new tariffs on the EU. In Madison, Wisconsin, state authorities opened a homicide investigation after a police officer fatally shot a black man, Corey Ruiz, during an arrest where the officer was injured with a knife. The shooting was captured on video and sparked protests. The police chief pledged full cooperation at a contentious news conference. A Russian military intelligence officer, Maxim Filchenkov, fled Japan after the Times exposed his operation smuggling high-tech weapon components through the Aeroflot office in Tokyo. And in entertainment, the makers of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey hired a replica Viking ship from a Swedish historical center. It returned damaged, and the center says it's owed for repairs. The film's code name during production? Charlie's Tale. Finally, nature at its most metal. Ocean sunfish, the largest bony fish in the world, up to 2,000 pounds, are hunted by orcas that ram them so hard they literally explode. Marine biologists off Baja California captured the violent, chaotic, yet highly calculated technique. Time now to unwind. Elizabeth Egan, a writer for our book review, makes the case that no genre benefits more from author narration than the celebrity memoir. There's an intimacy to hearing a famous life story in an instantly recognizable voice, like a front row seat at a one-person show. She's picked her favorites, all worth listening to at regular speed. In the world of mathematics, it's Olympics year. The Fields Medals, awarded every 4 years to mathematicians under 40, went to Hong Wang, Jacob Simmerman, John Pardon, and Yu Deng. Kenneth Chang profiled each. Pardon, 37, works at the intersection of geometry, topology, and physics. He published his first research paper in high school and focuses on theoretical loops. Wang, also 37, delivered a major proof on the Kakia conjecture, roughly described as the mathematics of a spinning needle in fractal dimensions. She once considered quitting math for architecture, then realized architecture from zero wasn't easy either. Deng, 37, at the University of Chicago, and Simmerman, 39, at the University of Toronto, round out the quartet with work in algebraic geometry and partial differential equations. A few dinner table tidbits. Young people don't say Google it anymore, they say search it up. Meet Mike Goodall, the man who builds boxing rings for the biggest fights. He once got 15 panicked calls in 20 minutes after Lennox Lewis casually remarked a ring looked small. Ryan Gosling hated his hamburger hand on the La La Land poster so much they finally fixed it in a new edition. And a Chicago suburb held a raffle where the prize was a better chance to buy a house, an innovative approach to affordable housing. What to do tonight? Cook a vivid kale sauce pasta. Watch Hadestown, the soulful Broadway musical translates beautifully to screen, filmed at London's West End with the original cast. Take care of your liver with healthy habits. Diet, exercise, and moderation can prevent or even reverse liver disease. Remove sunscreen stains with tips from Wirecutter. Play our housing hunt. Which Queen's home would you buy with $650,000? And of course, today's connections, spelling bee, and mini crossword are waiting. One last thing. My colleague Emma Rose Milligan writes about the popcorn bucket economy. At her local theater, a regular popcorn is $11, a large $12, or for $70, you get a small amount of popcorn inside a 22-inch plastic Trojan horse, released alongside The Odyssey. Astonishingly, many choose the horse. Special edition buckets have become hot commodities, and are 2D2 for a Star Wars film, a handbag for The Devil Wears Prada 2. AMC estimates it'll make $100 million this year from buckets alone. The container has become the product. That's your evening briefing for Thursday, July 23rd. Thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow.